Good evening, welcome to This Week in Turkey. The relations between Turkey and Germany are strained once again following the arrest of German human rights activist Peter Steutner.
The German Foreign Ministry said on Wednesday that it had summoned Turkey's ambassador in Berlin to protest the pre-trial detention of German human rights activist Peter Steutner. The ambassador was warned that Berlin does not accept the detention of its citizen. Steutner was one of the 10 people who were detained in a police raid on July 5th in a hotel on the island of Büyükada off the coast of Istanbul while participating in a workshop on digital safety. 6 of the 10 activists are accused of aiding an armed terror group and are jailed in Istanbul. The 4 other activists have been released. On Tuesday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel condemned the decision to detain Steutner ahead of his trial, saying it was absolutely unjustified. We declare our solidarity with him and all the others arrested. The German government will do all it can on all levels to secure his release, she said. German Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel had interrupted his summer vacation to attend government consultations over the Turkish court's decision to jail Steutner. At a press conference after the consultations on Thursday, Gabriel said, "I cannot make out any willingness on the part of the current Turkish government to follow this path with us. For that reason, Germany is forced to reorient its Turkey policy. The first consequences will be new travel advisories for German citizens in Turkey. The government and the coalition parties will be discussing further consequences," Gabriel said, adding that a range of financial sanctions were also under consideration. During Gabriel's press conference, the German Foreign Ministry released a warning statement on its website that Germans should exercise heightened caution when visiting Turkey. The Turkish government criticized Gabriel's remarks. As a country providing shelter to PKK and FETÖ terrorists in its own territory, statements by Germany are just double standards and unacceptable, wrote Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu on Twitter. Turkey's Foreign Ministry stated on Thursday that there had been a serious confidence crisis between Berlin and Ankara recently, describing German Foreign Minister Gabriel's remarks as the latest and an unacceptable example of the one-sided, distorted approach against Turkey. President Erdogan's spokesman Ibrahim Kalın also said, "We strongly condemn statements that German citizens who travel to Turkey are not safe and that German companies in Turkey should have hesitations and concerns." On the other hand, Turkish Economy Minister Nihat Zeybekci said in an interview with Reuters on Friday that investments in Turkey were fully guaranteed by both the Turkish government and its laws, and the crisis between two countries is temporary. Meanwhile, Germany has frozen its military deliveries to Turkey, according to Bild daily newspaper. German Economy Ministry neither denied nor admitted this claim, just saying they overview the defense projects which are demanded by Turkey.
Tonight we're joined by Murat Özçelik, who is the former Undersecretary of Public Order and Security, a former member of the Turkish Parliament, and also Turkey's former ambassador to Baghdad between 2009 and 2011. Welcome, Mr. Özçelik.
Thank you very much, Arjuna.
We were originally scheduled to talk about the Kurdish independence referendum in northern Iraq, but a brand new crisis emerged between Turkey and Germany. So I'd like to start by posing a question to you on this matter specifically. As we've just watched in the previous video, Germany's reaction seems to be quite severe, as they've chosen to take serious measures, such as issuing a travel warning to their citizens, telling them not to travel to Turkey, and also bringing up the possibility of a set of financial sanctions against Turkey. So, as a former ambassador and an experienced diplomat, how do you evaluate this brand new crisis between Turkey and Germany?
Well, firstly, I suppose it is not a brand new crisis. It is a continuation of process of crises, let me say. And of course, the first signals were, during the time of the run-up to the referendum and so on. At the time, as you have said, the Turkish politicians were not allowed to speak to the Turkish citizens or double citizens, whatever. Now, what we know for sure is, unfortunately, in Turkey, when the politicians start to talk about foreign policy, I unfortunately fail to understand whether it is really foreign policy or whether it is used for domestic political purposes. Therefore, it is really very hard to distinguish between the real foreign policy choices of Turkey nowadays and, well, whether it is for domestic political purposes. But it is not the same with Germany. If Germany says something, you know for sure that such measures are being considered. What I see now is a considerable difference at the democratic levels or the human rights levels, etc., between Turkey and the European Union and, you know, all the journalists or civil society members being jailed in Turkey, you know, whereas these things are unacceptable in Europe. Yes, in Turkey we have been indeed under the threat of FETÖ, that is for sure, and under the threat of PKK, these are known. But in Germany or the European Union, for you to go and arrest someone and detain someone, you should see that he is in the process of an imminent action or something, and then, you know, it is the decision of course, the judiciary in order to put these persons into detention. Whereas in Turkey, the whole thing today, you know, you don't know what the claim is, why you arrest, etc. You just say he is a member of a terrorist organization or a sympathizer of that particular organization. This is unacceptable in Europe. What I have to say is that hopefully, in a considerable short period of time, we track back and put our democracy on its right path so that the difference of democratic practices in Turkey and in Germany are almost in line, hopefully. Otherwise, we should expect, and we have got to know that Germany is the leader of the European Union as well. Yes, the Turkish government is doing as if everything in order to sort of change our political choices towards the East, towards the Middle East, but in my well, during my time in Iraq, for example, I know very well that the Arabs actually envied Turkey because of the fact that we were trying to become a European Union member. We have got to hopefully one day turn back to the same path. That is extremely important. We have got to do something about our reforms, democratic reforms and everything. Otherwise, unless we do something about the justice system, you cannot just put people in jail and say that they're terrorists. Then others will ask, why? What are you doing? They would like to see a due process. We as Turkish people, Turkish citizens, also wish to see a due process, not only for the German citizens, but for our own people as well.
So from what I gather from your analysis, we see that the previous crisis was more of a domestic politics stunt, whereas this ongoing one is more deeply rooted in the systemic faults that are going on currently in Turkey. So let's get back to our original topic, and before we go on speaking about the upcoming referendum in the north of Iraq by the Kurds, let's now hear more about the history of Ankara-Erbil relations.
The relationship between Ankara and Erbil has had a long and complicated history starting from the late 1980s. After the 1988 chemical attack in Halepçe against the Kurdish population, the then Prime Minister Turgut Özal opened the doors for those who fled from the massacre. This was considered as the first hand bestowed by Ankara on the Kurds. In 1991, the then President Özal had a meeting with the Iraqi Kurdish leader Celal Talabani in Ankara. Although the content of the meeting was not officially disclosed, in an interview he gave to Der Spiegel, Talabani said that Özal mentioned the idea of giving autonomy to the Kurds. After a joint initiative taken by Özal and Talabani, the PKK declared ceasefire in 1993 after a period of intense and violent attacks in southeastern Anatolia. In the same year, the then Prime Minister Demirel uttered the famous phrase, "We recognize the Kurdish reality." In 1994, leading Kurdish political parties, KDP and KYB, opened representative offices in Turkey. However, the opening of the Turkish diplomatic mission in Erbil took more than 15 years. In 2009, during his visit to Baghdad, then Prime Minister Erdogan said, "We are opening our Consulate General Erbil." The official opening of the Consulate General was held in June 2011. Just before the opening, Erdogan's visit to Erbil in March 2011 was the first official visit made by a Turkish Prime Minister. In return, the President of Iraqi Kurdistan, Mesut Barzani, has visited Turkey many times. On October 30, 2012, Barzani attended the ruling AKP's Congress where he was applauded. In these years, Erdogan and Barzani had very close ties and the relationship between Ankara and Erbil was on good terms. 1 year later, in November 2013, another important meeting was held in Diyarbakır where Erdogan met Barzani and Şivan Perver, a musician and a prominent figure for Kurds. After the major political parties in Iraqi Kurdistan agreed to hold a referendum for independence earlier this year, Ankara reacted to this decision in a bold tone. "This referendum will not serve anybody's interests," President Erdogan has said, expressing his regret for Erbil's decision. After a while, Erdogan also criticized the decision to hold a referendum, calling it an error and a threat to the territorial integrity of Iraq. It seems that a possible pro-independence outcome after the referendum will create a new chapter in the bilateral relations between Ankara and Erbil.
Welcome again, Mr. Özçelik. As you know, the Turkish National Security Council had a meeting on Monday, and the statement that came out of that meeting touched upon the issue of the northern Iraqi Kurds independence referendum. And the two things that stood out in the statement were that, A, the decision to hold a referendum was, I quote, a grave mistake, and B, that it was the first time that Iraqi Kurdistan was referred to as the regional government of northern Iraq. So can you explain the significance of this statement in light of these 2 points, or perhaps others?
Sure, let me try to do that. Well, there is, of course, a considerable backslide in the language that has been used, because what I should say is that in the last several years, when we look at our relations in the Middle East, I would say the KRG was almost the only neighboring region, let me say, that we had really good relations. And as a matter of fact, the Turkish government, and the president in particular, knows how difficult it was to normalize relations actually with the Kurdistan region of Iraq, because in the past, in Turkey, not only the military establishment but the bureaucracy, the establishment at large, always looked at any development with regard to the Kurds as an origin of future badness, you know, such as, again, a terrorist this, terrorist that, etc. And unfortunately, almost every Kurdish citizen of Turkey, from time to time, due to nationalistic, I don't know, prone, sort of, they were seen as prospective members of the PKK, which was bad, you know. And really, during the time when I was, you know, the special envoy from 2007, 2009, and then afterwards, the Turkish government of the time really implemented a holistic foreign policy vis-a-vis not only the region but Iraq. On the one hand, they were trying to enhance relations with Iraq, with the federal government in Baghdad, and also the Kurds. It was going hand in hand almost, because that was the strategic high-level meetings chaired by the prime ministers of each of these countries. And apart from that, we looked at the KRG for the first time from a different perspective. We said, okay, we want to get rid of the terrorist actions emanating from Kandil, okay? But to be able to do that, we said, let us really have good relations with the Kurds at large. And we should not treat all the Kurds as potential PKK members, but Kurds, you know, they are our citizens, and, you know, somebody at the time came and drew that border between us. Some families on this side, the other families on the other side, and so on. Therefore, we said we should go back, you know, and bring together these peoples, yes, in different countries, certainly, but on the other hand, the good relations at the end of the day, economic relations, energy relations, and also security relations would result in something good, okay? And we did that at the end of the day. This holistic approach actually resulted in the peace process, the so-called peace process, I should say, because at the end it didn't materialize, or it didn't result in the way we had hoped. However, a lot of positive things happened inside Turkey as well. Now, when I look at this statement, I wish to come back to this statement. Unfortunately, yeah, the tone is quite different, and you know, Turkey should be one of the countries that should understand most the destiny of the peoples down there. I mean, the Kurds in Iraq actually suffered a lot in the hands of Saddam, suffered a lot in the hands of the other Arab governments, even after 2003. They have really worked hard in order to implement in its, what do you say, in its spirit as well as letter, you know, the federal constitution, which gives them certain rights, etc. It has always been the Arabs reading the constitution from a different angle and the Kurds from a different angle, and as they have not been able to get the budgetary assistance, this and that, at the end of the day, Mesut Barzani, and I don't know if we're going to have time for that, but the domestic politics inside the KRG, inside Iraq, sort of pressured Mesut Barzani to take this step, you know. When you look at the parties, political parties inside the KRG, now they would not go against a Kurdish nationalistic objective or cause. This is independence. But they do have objections to the ruling of Mesut Barzani, for example, the PUK, Goran, and so on and so forth. And we should also know that there is considerable Iranian influence, which is, Iran is also against the Kurdish independence. What I hope is the following: despite this National Security Council statement, I hope in the coming weeks, in the coming months, let me say, we will look at it from a more reasonable point of view in order to understand the country. And mind you, this referendum is not going to be, or should not be read at this particular moment as the Declaration of Independence. So the referendum is one thing. Declaration of Independence is another thing, because when you're separating from Iraq, the most important side of it is, apart from recognition by the United States or Turkey or other countries, the separation should be non-violent. The Kurds would not like to go to war with Baghdad, you know. We know now that almost all the Shia Arabs are against this move, are against this even holding of the referendum. The Sunni Arabs are not talking for the time being. There are some other reasons for that. But Masoud Barzani, I suppose, is going to hold this referendum. There is no doubt that the KRG is going to say, the people, Kurds in KRG, is going to say yes, of course, to this. But the other problem is, as you may know, is the disputed territories. I mean, he also said that the referendum is going to be held in the disputed territories. So we will see what happens there. What they expect in KRG, I have spoken with several officials over there, what they expect is that the Kurds, even in the disputed territories, are going to give their votes, cast their votes, and they will show their choice. But it does not mean, again, this is the explanation of the KRG, this also does not mean that the disputed territories will automatically come under the rule of the KRG after this referendum, because whether having a Kurdish country, independent country or state, is one thing, the borders of it, whether it is going to include this and that, etc., that's a different story. There are so many complications in that, but this is a
you mentioned two very important points, which kind of bring me to my next question, or my next two mini questions, follow-up questions rather. You mentioned the Iranian influence and how Iran is reacting to this decision, and you also talked about the Sunni Arabs, who are kind of at the moment on the hold and not reacting in any serious way. So firstly, let's talk about the other ethnic groups present in Iraq and how they react to this decision. It's not only the Sunni Arabs, there's also the Iraqi Turkmens, for example. And you also made a remark about the domestic politics within the KRG, but now let's take Iraq as a whole and let's focus on the domestic politics and the shareholders, if you may, that are present. So how do you evaluate the different attitudes by the different ethnic groups within Iraq?
Of course, to us, the Turkomans come to mind first. So when we look at the Turkomans, I mean, when you look at the disputed territories, the disputed territories starts from, let's say, Sinjar, includes Tel Afer. Tel Afer is the Turkish, or as you know, the Turkoman city or kasaba, whatever, and then town, and then you will go down to Kirkuk, and then to Surmatu, for example, etc., down to Hanekin, yani Mendeli and Hanekin. In all those lands, it's not only the Kurds there. You know, it's Kurds, Turkomans, Arabs, etc. And of course, when you look at the Turkomans, you have the Shia Turkomans and you have the Sunni Turkomans. The Shia Turkomans, most of the time, are prodded, let me say, by the Turkoman Shia opinion leaders to follow what the Iranian mullahs actually suggested they should do. Therefore, the Turkoman Shia, but not only them, of course, as far as Kirkuk is concerned, they are against this referendum, holding of this referendum. It is quite natural because on the one hand, they look at Turkey and they see the president saying, no, this is a grave mistake, you shouldn't. And then you cannot expect the Turkomans to take a separate, a different line other than what Turkey says in the first place. But on the other hand, they have, of course, had their rifts with the Kurds, their rifts with the Arabs, especially Hawija ones, etc. But as I said, they would say no, absolutely, to this holding of the referendum. But at some point, one has got to sit down and gauge the situation in the face of what they would gain from the Kurds if they were to live under the Kurds, together with the Kurds, or how much they are gaining from Arabs, from the federal government. You would get, believe me, I mean, as those people have suffered a lot in the hands of so many different people, it is so hard to get them speak their minds in the right way, let me say, truthfully. But they will certainly make that analysis in their minds. And apart from that, unfortunately, Turkomans are not a large portion of the overall population in Iraq. Therefore, it is very important that Turkey helps them, you know. Whether it is going to be under the KRG later, because they will move on to Article 140 of the Constitution in order to hold other referendum, in order to see whether they would like to go under the KRG or separately. This is the second phase, let me say. But there, whatever the Turkomans' decision is, they would definitely need Turkey's help and negotiations with all sides, whether it is the federal government or whether it is the Erbil government. It is very important, and we should not lose time. We should not lose time. It is opportune time, because if we wish to get as much as possible, the timing is extremely important, and I suppose it is the time for us to go and help them now.
Let's go back to the second important remark you made in your previous response, which was about Iran's attitude to this decision. So far, it's quite clear from the statement of the National Security Council meeting. It's very clear what Turkey's stance is. The Turkish government considers it a grave mistake and is not very fond of the decision. But now let's talk about the other neighboring countries that have Kurdish populations and how they're reacting to this. So this only leaves us with Syria and Iran.
Yeah.
How would you explain their stances to this decision?
Now, there is no doubt that today, when we look at Iraq and Syria, there is indeed a competition, I would say, between Turkey and the US on the one hand, although Turkey nowadays does not have that sway over developments in Iraq or Syria, but still we are an important country to reckon with, actually, in the region. And Iran, Russia, etc., and the Iraqi government now as the stooges of Iran. So what I should say about Iran is Iran is the real winner of the war in Iraq and even in Syria, I would say. And the United States is now well aware of that. And maybe thanks to the prodding of the American Jewish community and also Israel. Because Israel also considers Iran as a considerable threat in the region to its own existence as well. And the more influence it yields, whatever, in the region, the more threatened Israel is going to be as well. And on the other hand, I'm not talking about, mind you, Shia versus Sunnis now. What I'm talking about is the realpolitik or the foreign policy of the mullahs, of the Iranian regime in this in the region, which is about to expand its hegemony, nothing else. And against this, Turkey has got to stand to constrain that thing, because believe me, I have referred to, for example, the Iraqi Arabs in Kirkuk, west of Kirkuk, and not only them, the Sunni Arabs and others, as they have recently been persecuted and so on. They really look towards Turkey to help them, to help them. Yes, we have criticized the Turkish government, for taking sides in the sectarian war, etc. But we should also consider, the fact that Iran actually was there itself. The Al-Quds force was there, all the militia are there, etc., etc. And, what are you going to do? The Turkish government was, in a way, I should also put this as a fact, was cornered in a way to act as a savior or protector of some people. Of course, the way the Turkish policy was handled in Syria was, in the eyes of so many people, not correct because of Daesh, etc., foreign fighters going through Turkey, some other assistance, etc., which of course the Turkish government denies at the end of the day. But Iran has really sort of pushed us Turks to do something about the overall real political situation in the region. Now, Iran knows that we had and we have good relations with the Kurds. And yes, we have made a lot of mistakes, etc., but the Kurds in Turkey are living in a much better way than any other country in the region, including Iran itself. And they know that at the end of the day, inside Turkey, democracy is going to reign, And within this context, we're going to have good relations with the Kurds, and we will do that together with whether we have good or bad relations nowadays with Europe. We are a part of that civilization as well, Therefore, I would say Iran does not wish to see an independent Kurdistan because they know that that independent Kurdish state is going to look towards Turkey, look towards Europe, look towards the United States, etc. Therefore, they don't like it that way. And on the other hand, they have such a great influence in Baghdad and in the south, they do not wish to leave northern Iraq not within the reach of their own grab. They wish to have a say in the Kurdish political situation as well. And again, inside the KRG, as you may know, especially in Süleymaniye, the PUK and Goran are very much under the influence of Iran. And, you know, the United States, Turkey, Israel, and some other countries are not happy about the expansion of Iranian influence. Not that we have, I'm telling this as a Turkish diplomat, a retired one, not that we have anything against the Iranians or something, but the mullah regime and that ideology sort of thing, that is something that we are not very much fond of or happy of. They are always propagating against Turkey in Iraq and in Syria. I've lived through that when I was in Iraq. We have to be very careful about Iran. It is not the independence of Kurds or something, as we see as a threat, whatever. It's not going to be a threat in my eyes, because we are very powerful. Anything that happens to our territorial integrity, etc., will, I mean, we can, of course, it's never going to happen. We would never allow that. But Iran is a very important country, and if it also has the assets in the south of Iraq, and it is the second largest oil fields in the world, you know, after Saudi Arabia. Iran has its own oil fields, and together it's unbelievable. In that case, we have to rather think of the real big players, the real actors in the region, than the smaller ones, you know. I mean, Kurds are actually in need of Turkey's help. They're not threatening Turkey for the time, but the PKK is a different story. We can talk about it in a different way.
At a different time?
Yes, yes.
For the final part of our conversation, let's zoom back into Ankara.
Yep.
So the Turkish government is known to have separate attitudes towards the Kurdish populations of Syria and Iraq. What can you tell us about these different attitudes?
Yeah. Well, I should say, I never understood at the beginning, you know, I said, we have very good relations with the KRG. Why wouldn't we have the same with the Kurds in Syria, you know? And part of them also went from Turkey to Syria, as you know. And during the time when Salih Muslim was coming and going and so on, so I said, this is the right decision, because then the Turkish government is going to actually attract them towards Turkey as well. We're going to have good relations with the Syrian Kurds as well. So it's going to be great, you know. At the end, we will also stop the PKK from acting this way and that way. However, a few actions of the Turkish government, of course, turned the Syrian Kurds against us, and the PYD, of course. And nowadays they are extremely close with the PKK. What I think is that maybe we could have, that is a question that we have to pose to the Turkish government officials, but maybe we could have sort of distanced the PYD leadership, Salih Muslim and so on and so forth, from the PKK leadership. But you know, we should not also lose sight of one fact. When Iran saw that Turkey may have more influence in Syria, in that case, unfortunately, they started to use the PKK against Turkish targets as well, or Turkey as well. And there they have sort of, I would say, infiltrated all the Syrian Kurds as well, and they have tried to get them on their side, and they managed to do that, I would say. And the PKK is extremely powerful down there nowadays. Under the circumstances, I still believe that Turkey is capable enough to turn the tide. I'm sure at some point we have to try to find a way of mending the fences with the Syrian Kurds as well. Yes, we're saying the PYD leadership is under the influence of PKK cooperation. It's the PKK, etc. Understood. But again, all the Kurds are not the PKK members. And they know that even the Syrian Kurds, if they do not know now, they will know that Turkey is a much more amicable country, a country to look forward to than any other country in the region. And we have to help all these guys. We don't need to help only the Arabs, We have Kurds as well in our country as well. So these are all doable. And hopefully the Turkish government will also reconsider its policy towards Syria as well, because there is a large disparity, as you have said, between the way we have dealt with the KRG and Syria. Unfortunately, nowadays, things are, anyway, hopefully things will turn around. Yes.
Mr. Özçelik, thank you very much for your comment and for joining us in the studio tonight.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
We'll now continue with a video on the history of the Iraqi Kurdistan.
سواء كان هناك تأييد أمريكاني إيراني أو لا يكون.
On June 7, 2017, Mesut Barzani, the president of the Iraqi Kurdish regional government, announced that the Northern Territory will hold an independence referendum on September 25. Few months ago, the major political parties in Iraqi Kurdistan, the Kurdistan Democratic Party of Barzani, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan of Jalal Talabani, and Goran had agreed to have a popular vote on independence, long inspired by Iraqi Kurds, who are estimated to make up around 20% of Iraqi population. Independence has long been the centerpiece of Kurdish ambitions, the fourth largest ethnic group in the Middle East. Besides the short-lived state of Republic of Mahabad, founded as a Kurdish state during Soviet invasion of Iran in 1941, Kurds have been a nation without state during the modern history of the Middle East, partitioned in four neighboring countries: Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Iraqi Kurds, similar to their brethren in neighboring countries, have had a complicated relationship with the central authorities of their country, often marked with rebellions that have been backlashed with oppression and violence. The most violent chapter of the relationship between Kurds and Baghdad came on 1988, towards the end of Iran-Iraq war, where Iraqi forces launched the Anfal campaign against the Kurds. As a result of Saddam Hussein's attempts to weaken Kurdish resistance movement, tens of thousands of Kurdish civilians and fighters were killed and thousands of others were forcibly displaced, involving the notorious Halabja attack, where thousands of Kurdish civilians were targeted with chemical weapons. Iraqi Kurds have obtained a de facto autonomy on 1991 when US-led coalition established a no-fly zone in northern Iraq to protect Kurds during the First Gulf War. Yet, the escalation of tensions between two main political parties, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan and the Kurdistan Democratic Party, led to the eruption of a civil war that lasted from 1994 until 1997. The civil war destroyed the newly formed autonomous government. US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003 meant a new beginning for Iraqi Kurds. The 2005 Iraq constitution recognized an autonomous Kurdistan region in the north of the country run by the Kurdistan regional government. Since then, Iraqi Kurds have often mentioned the prospects of declaring independence from the Baghdad government. The aspiration of independence of Iraqi Kurds is not welcomed by Baghdad, as well as governments of neighboring countries who are concerned about the pursuit of a similar goal by their own Kurdish minorities.
A 6.6 magnitude earthquake hit the Aegean coast of Turkey and the Greek island of Kos early on Friday. At least 2 people died in Greece, while 90 others were injured in the Turkish province of Muğla.
A 6.6 magnitude earthquake hit the Aegean coast of Turkey and the Greek island of Kos early on Friday. At least 2 people, including 1 Turkish and 1 Swedish citizen, were killed in Kos due to the earthquake. 90 people were also injured in the Aegean province of Muğla and its districts. The epicenter of the earthquake was the Gökova Gulf. At least 160 aftershocks have been recorded, according to the Kandilli Observatory of Boğaziçi University. A 13-centimeter tsunami wave was triggered in the Aegean province of Muğla's Bodrum district, which is a popular summer holiday destination. Officials remarked that Greece's Kos Island had been affected by the quake more than Turkey and was appeared to be the worst hit. A ferry was sent from Bodrum to Kos to evacuate around 200 Turkish citizens who were on vacation on the island, said the Turkish Foreign Ministry. Muğla Mayor Osman Gürün said authorities took immediate measures against fires due to the breakage of electricity transmission lines. Tens of thousands of holidaymakers spent the night outdoors in Bodrum and on Kos, with many sleeping on sunbeds along beaches and in squares.
6 of the 10 detained human rights activists in Burada were jailed for their alleged involvement with terrorist organizations. Andrew Garden from Amnesty International spoke to Mediascope TV this week about the arrests.
Well, the detention of these 10 human rights defenders at a, frankly, routine human rights workshop is a very important case, which we all have to follow very closely. Frankly, if human rights defenders can be detained en masse in this way for routine things that they do defending human rights, in this case a routine professional workshop, then it means that none of us in Turkey are safe to defend human rights. Next week I could be detained, or colleagues from other human rights organisations could be detained. But also, particularly when they came to court, there's no evidence in the investigation file. The only thing that these people have been accused of is their work for defending human rights. So İdil Eser, our director, Amnesty International's campaigns were associated with terrorism by the prosecutor, and for this reason, İdil Eser's participation in Amnesty International campaigns, that's why she's in prison today. I mean, it's going to be an incredibly important campaign for Amnesty International. We're not going to give up until all the human rights defenders in prison are released. It's going to be a campaign for us in Turkey, but also it's going to be a huge campaign internationally. But Amnesty International isn't going to work on it, just ourselves. We're going to be working in coordination with other international human rights organizations, other civil society organizations. So we really need as big a coalition as possible to highlight this outrageous case. And we need to explain very clearly, these people are human rights defenders, they're in prison now because they defended human rights, and all human rights defenders in Turkey are at risk because of this.
The No to Source Destruction platform started a petition campaign to stop the proposed urban transformation project in the historical district of Sur in Diyarbakır.
The newly established No to Source Destruction platform, which opposes the urban transformation of Sur, a historical city located near Diyarbakır in the southeast of Turkey, claims that the government is involved in a systematic campaign to change the demographic composition of the city. In a press meeting on Monday, Büşra Cizelioğulları, the co-presenter of the platform, made an open call to the international arena to save the district of Sur. Cizelioğulları claimed that the local population is being forced to emigrate and said, "It is our duty as conscientious individuals and organizations to hear the voices of those screaming for Sur. We have to make this destruction stop." In an interview on Medyascope this week, journalist Mahmut Bozarslan talked about the petition campaign being run to save the district of Sur. The plan is to destroy the two neighborhoods and start the construction of new buildings instead. Although it has started out in only two neighborhoods, in the long term, the destruction will spread over to all of Ali Pasha and Lalebey. A project was designed with the collaboration of several NGOs, local people and the municipality. But after the trustees were appointed, the project came to a halt. NGOs are not involved in the campaign to stop the destruction, and neither is the Chamber of Architects. There will be a petition campaign both on the internet, via social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, and in the form of wet ink signatures. Video messages will be collected from authors, academics, and other public intellectuals. The petition campaign will last for a month, and the signatures will then be sent to the Turkish Parliament. By the way, the campaign is currently going on at change.org. They are holding some events in order to make their voice heard in Europe and the US. Last month, they visited the ambassadors of the European Union countries. The real aim of this petition campaign is to get the attention of UNESCO, as Sur was listed as a World Cultural Heritage Site by UNESCO last year. If they can get the attention of UNESCO, it can put pressure on the government and it can be a hope for the future of Sur.
Now let's have a look at what's on in Istanbul next week.
Istanbul Jazz Festival will end tonight with a special concert where the unifying power of music will be felt once again. Having performed the day before at the festival, Basel Rejups band Sorina will be joined by Sirojittin Yürev and the Syrian Women Chorus, founded by Syrian women who found asylum in Turkey. With the support of the Human Resource Development Foundation, both the artists on stage and the audience will form a multivocal cultural mosaic in the concert, where Syrian culture and music will be celebrated. Big Burn Istanbul will be on at Suma Beach between the 21st and 23rd of July, with a massive lineup including Richie Houghton, Luciano, Loco DJ, Dixon, Nicole Mudaber, Acid Pauli Showcase, and many more electronic music superstars, combined with a pinch of sunlight and summertime euphoria. Located on a sandy yellow beach by the rolling green hills, Suma Beach offers endless down and high-tempo electronic music for 3 days. As a part of the Open Air Film Festival, which is organized with the collaboration of Unique Istanbul and Başka Sinema, Reha Erdem's last film Big Big World will be screened this Sunday. The festival is screening films 3 days a week, every Tuesday, Thursday and Sunday, night throughout summer at Unique Istanbul in the Sarıyer district. The festival will close on September 16th with Sürü, The Herd, which will be screened to commemorate the legendary Turkish actor Tarık Akan on the first anniversary of his death.
That's all from This Week in Turkey. Thanks for tuning in and hope to see you again next Friday at 9 p.m. Goodbye.